My husband left me penniless, so I emptied our joint account and disappeared. For 35 years, I believed in forever. Then I discovered the truth. One betrayal led to another, until I had nothing left but my dignity. This is my story of loss, awakening, and rebirth. Subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The knife slipped from my fingers, clattering against the porcelain plate as I stared at my husband across our dining room table. 35 years of marriage condensed into this moment of stunning clarity. You forgot our anniversary. My voice was barely audible above the gentle classical music I'd selected for our special dinner. The dinner I'd spent hours preparing while rehearsing what I would say when Richard arrived home. Richard didn't look up from his phone. Oh, right. Sorry about that, Martha. I watched him cut into the prime rib I'd splurged on. A week's worth of grocery money for a single meal I thought would rekindle something between us. His fork moved mechanically between plate and mouth, his eyes never leaving the glowing screen beside his wine glass. I made your favorite, the way your mother used to make it. I tried again, my hands trembling slightly under the table. It's good, he said without looking up. At 58, I'd spent over half my life with this man, teaching high school mathematics by day, managing our household finances by night. The reliable Martha Sullivan of Springfield, Massachusetts, the woman who balanced checkbooks and graded papers with equal precision. I was thinking, I ventured carefully, maybe this weekend we could drive up to that bed and breakfast in Vermont, the one where we can't, flying to Chicago Friday morning. Big client meeting? Richard finally looked up, but only to reach for his wine. Probably won't be back until Tuesday. The familiar excuse settled between us like an unwelcome guest. I nodded, swallowing the revelation that the weekend getaway I'd already booked and paid for would go unused. Another cancellation, another loss. It's our anniversary, I said again, hoping the significance might finally register. Richard's eyes flickered to my face, then away. Ah, right. 35 years, isn't it? He checked his watch. Listen, Jennifer sent over some reports I need to review before tomorrow's meeting. I'll be in the study. Jennifer. His assistant's name fell from his lips with an ease that made my stomach tighten. He stood, leaving his half-eaten dinner behind. I made your mother's chocolate cake, I called after him. The one from your childhood. He paused in the doorway, not turning around. Save me a piece for tomorrow. After clearing the table, I stood in our kitchen, methodically wrapping leftovers that would join countless other containers in our refrigerator. Meals prepared with hope, abandoned after a few distracted bites. I caught my reflection in the window above the sink. Gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain around my neck, lips pressed into a thin line. Later, I lay alone in our bed, scrolling through photos on my tablet. Richard and me on our honeymoon, young and laughing on a beach. Richard and me at my father's funeral, his arm protectively around my shoulders. Richard and me at our 20th anniversary party, still looking at each other with something like desire. I zoomed in on our faces in that last photo, searching for the moment when everything changed. When did his eyes stop finding mine across crowded rooms? When did his hand stop reaching for mine under restaurant tables? When did I become invisible? I heard Richard's footsteps on the stairs and quickly turned off the tablet, sliding it under my pillow. I closed my eyes and slowed my breathing, pretending to be asleep, a skill I'd perfected over the past 2 years. He entered quietly, moving around our bedroom with practiced stealth. The bathroom light clicked on, then off. The mattress dipped as he slid under the covers, maintaining the careful distance that had become our unspoken arrangement. No good night, no gentle touch on my shoulder, just the soft glow of his phone illuminating his profile until he finally set it aside and turned away from me. Silent tears slid down my cheeks as I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many more anniversaries I could endure like this. The faculty lounge smelled of burnt coffee and dry erase markers. I sat at the corner table, calculator in hand, reviewing our joint account statements while my lunch cooled untouched beside me. "You're doing it again," Susan said, sliding into the chair across from me. My closest friend and fellow math teacher pushed my salad container toward me. "Eat. Financial forensics can wait." I rubbed my eyes beneath my glasses. "Something's not adding up, Susan. These charges at Fleming's Steakhouse? Richard hates their food. And this hotel in Boston, he was supposedly in Detroit that week." Susan's expression softened with concern. "Martha, how long are we going to dance around this? You know what's happening. He's just stressed at work," I said automatically. the excuse worn smooth from repetition. The promotion last year came with more responsibility and more business trips, more late nights, more excuses. Susan reached across the table and closed my ledger. You took a leave of absence from teaching to save your marriage. It's been 3 weeks. Has he spent a single evening with you? The truth stung. Richard's reaction to my announcement had been anything but grateful. Why would you do something so stupid? You love that job. And now we're going to have financial problems. As if my salary as a veteran teacher was what kept our household afloat, not his executive position. I've been married 35 years, I whispered. What else am I supposed to do? Maybe ask yourself why you're the only one fighting to save this marriage. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Susan squeezed my hand before leaving for her algebra class. I remained seated, opening my personal bank statement, the account Richard knew nothing about. My mother's voice echoed in my memory. Every woman needs her own money, Martha, no matter how good the marriage. The balance showed $4,000. 34 years of $100 monthly deposits, minus the withdrawals I'd made over the decades. College application fees for Michael and Jessica. Emergency dental work when Richard was between jobs. The down payment for Jessica's first car when she turned 16. Small, necessary expenses that had slowly depleted what should have been a substantial savings. That evening, I prepared Richard's favorite pasta dish, set the table with our wedding china, and lit candles. When the garage door opened at 8:45 p.m., I smoothed my dress, a new purchase that had sat in my closet for months, waiting for an occasion. Richard entered, loosening his tie, briefcase in hand. He paused, surveying the dining room with obvious irritation. What's all this? I thought we could talk, I said, gesturing to the table. About us? He sighed heavily. Martha, I've had a 14-hour day. I don't have the energy for whatever this is. That's the problem. You never have energy for us anymore. Richard's phone chimed. He glanced at it, then back at me. Can we do this another time? I have to take this. No, I said, my voice surprisingly firm. We need to talk now. About these. I placed the printed credit card statements on the table. About the restaurants you hate but visit weekly. Hotels in our own city. Jewelry purchases that I've never received. His face darkened. You're monitoring my spending now? This is exactly why I can't be around you anymore. You're suffocating me. I manage our finances. I always have. These aren't business expenses, Richard. Who is she? This is ridiculous. He turned toward the stairs. I'm not having this conversation. If you walk away, I'm transferring money from our joint savings to my personal account. Tonight. Richard froze, then slowly turned back to me, his expression unrecognizable. You have a personal account? Something in his voice sent a chill through me. I'd revealed my only safety net. Your paranoia is out of control, he said, voice dangerously quiet. You need help, Martha. Professional help. That night, I transferred $1,500 to my personal account while Richard slept. In the darkness of our guest bathroom, I stared at the confirmation screen, feeling simultaneously powerful and terrified. For the first time in our marriage, I was preparing for war. I developed a system. Each suspicious transaction went into my green notebook, cross-referenced with Richard's claimed whereabouts. When receipts appeared in jacket pockets or the car's center console, I photographed them with my phone before returning them exactly as found. The web of lies grew more intricate and more sloppy with each passing week. April 12th, claimed Chicago conference. Credit card shows $340 at Giovanni's restaurant, downtown Boston. April 13th, claimed delayed flight. Hotel charge at Westin Copley Place. April 15th, claimed business dinner with clients. $920 jewelry purchase at Tiffany's. You're building quite the case there. Perry Mason, Susan said when she visited my house one Wednesday afternoon, eyeing my meticulous records spread across the dining room table. I need to know for sure, I said, sorting receipts by date, before I confront him. And then what? Susan perched on the edge of the table, arms crossed. Let's say you confirm he's cheating. What's your next move? The question knocked the wind from me. In my determination to uncover the truth, I'd avoided considering what would come after. I don't know, I admitted. I've never been on my own. I was 23 when we married. But you're not helpless. Martha, you're the most capable person I know. That evening, Richard announced another overnight trip. The Chicago client needs more hand-holding. I'll be back tomorrow night. I nodded, keeping my eyes on my book. I'll be at Susan's book club tomorrow evening, probably home late. His relief was palpable. I'd given him the perfect alibi without him having to work for it. The next day, I called Richard's office from the school administration phone during my lunch break. "Good afternoon, Sullivan Insurance Group," the receptionist answered. "Hello, this is Martha Sullivan, Richard's wife. I need to courier some documents to him for the Chicago meeting. Could you confirm which hotel he's staying at?" A pause. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sullivan, but Mr. Sullivan isn't scheduled for any trips this week. He's been in the office all morning. Would you like me to transfer you?" "No," I said quickly. "I must have misunderstood. Thank you." That night, instead of going to Susan's, I parked across from our house, slouched down in the driver's seat. At 7:30, Richard's BMW backed out of our garage. I waited until he turned the corner, then followed at a distance. 15 minutes later, he pulled into the parking lot of Le Chateau, an upscale French restaurant downtown that Richard had taken me to exactly once on our 30th anniversary. I found a spot with a clear view of the entrance and waited. At 7:45, a taxi arrived. A young woman stepped out, tall, blonde, wearing a fitted red dress that accentuated every curve of her 20-something body. Richard emerged from the restaurant, greeting her with a lingering kiss before escorting her inside, his hand on the small of her back. The intimate gesture, one he hadn't used with me in years, sent a physical pain through my chest. I gripped the steering wheel to steady myself, breath coming in short gasps. Somehow, seeing it with my own eyes was worse than any credit card statement or misplaced receipt. The familiar way he touched her, the way she looked up at him, laughing at something he said. I raised my phone to take a picture, but found my hand shaking too violently to capture anything but blur. Instead, I waited 2 excruciating hours until they emerged, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. I watched them return to his car together and drive toward downtown. When I finally returned home, I didn't cry. Instead, I sat at our dining room table, opened my laptop, and transferred another $2,000 from our joint account to my personal savings. As I stared at the confirmation screen, something inside me hardened. For 35 years, I had played by the rules. I had compromised. I had looked the other way. No more. The envelope fell from between the pages of Richard's business journal, landing softly on our bedroom carpet. I'd been straightening his nightstand, a habit I maintained despite our fracturing marriage, when the hotel bill slipped out. The Ritz-Carlton, Boston, a deluxe suite. The date matched one of Richard's supposed Chicago conferences. I sat on the edge of our bed, clutching the bill. The room charge was just the beginning. Room service for 2, a bottle of Dom Perignon, spa services, all charged to our joint credit card. The bedroom suddenly felt airless. I moved to Richard's closet, running my hands through jacket pockets, searching for more evidence. Finding nothing, I turned to his dresser. The velvet box was hidden beneath his socks, the navy ones I'd bought him last Christmas. Inside gleamed a diamond necklace nearly identical to one I'd admired in a store window months ago. When I'd pointed it out, Richard had dismissed it as overpriced costume jewelry. With trembling fingers, I checked the receipt tucked inside. $3,450. Purchased the day after I'd transferred money to my personal account. My phone rang, startling me. Susan's name flashed on the screen. "Can you talk?" she asked when I answered. "Not really. I just found..." My voice caught. "Evidence. Lots of it." "You need to see a lawyer," Susan said without hesitation. "My sister Diana specializes in divorce. Let me set up a meeting." "Divorce?" The word felt foreign on my tongue. "I'm still trying to process the affair." "Martha, listen to me. Men like Richard don't just cheat. They prepare. They protect themselves. You need to do the same." After hanging up, I sat at our desktop computer and logged into our bank accounts. The joint checking account showed routine activity, bills, groceries, utilities, but the joint savings account balance had dropped significantly in recent weeks. $47,000 down to $22,650. I checked the transaction history, finding multiple large withdrawals. When I clicked for details, each showed the same description. Counter withdrawal by account holder. Cash. He was withdrawing cash to hide his tracks. Heart pounding, I checked our investment accounts. 2 had been emptied entirely, with transfer requests dated just days after I'd confronted Richard about the suspicious charges. He wasn't just having an affair. He was preparing for a separation on his terms. But why hadn't I noticed these major financial changes earlier? The realization hit me like a physical blow. 6 months ago, Richard had suggested taking over some of the financial management to reduce my stress while I focused on teaching. I'd been grateful for his sudden interest in our finances, never suspecting it was the beginning of his plan. I still paid the regular household bills, but he had started handling investment accounts and larger financial decisions, a convenient division that now revealed its true purpose. I printed everything: bank statements, credit card bills, investment account records, and added them to my growing file of evidence. Then, hands shaking, I transferred another $2,000 to my personal account, bringing my total private savings to $7,500. The front door slammed downstairs. Richard was home early. I quickly closed the browser windows and returned everything to its place, tucking the velvet box back under his socks. The hotel bill went into my evidence folder, which I slid under the mattress on my side of the bed. "Martha?" Richard called from the foot of the stairs. "Up here," I answered, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Just changing." He appeared in the doorway, looking surprisingly cheerful. "I've been thinking. You're right. We haven't spent enough time together lately. How about dinner tomorrow night? There's something important I want to discuss." My pulse quickened. Had he somehow discovered my investigation? Or worse, my personal account? "That sounds nice," I managed, forcing a smile. "Where were you thinking?" "Le Chateau. I've already made a reservation." The restaurant where I'd seen him with her. Blood rushed to my face. Was this some kind of cruel joke? "Perfect," I said, turning away so he wouldn't see my expression. "I'll look forward to it." That night, I lay awake beside Richard, listening to his even breathing, wondering how many lies he'd told me in 35 years, and how many more he planned to tell before destroying my life completely. Tomorrow at dinner, I would have my answer. Le Chateau hadn't changed since our anniversary 5 years ago. Still the same crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and hushed conversations. As the maitre d' led us to our table, I scanned the room, half expecting to see Richard's blonde companion at another table. "You look nice," Richard said as we settled into our seats. He seemed almost like his old self, attentive, charming, making easy conversation with the sommelier about wine pairings. I'd chosen my outfit carefully: a navy dress I knew he liked, pearl earrings he'd given me for our 25th anniversary. If this was to be our last dinner as husband and wife, I wanted to remember who I had been in this marriage: dignified, loving, genuine. Everything Richard was not. "So," I said after our appetizers arrived, "you mentioned there was something important to discuss." Richard reached across the table and took my hand, a gesture so unexpected I nearly pulled away. "I've been thinking about us, Martha, about our future." Hope, unwanted and dangerous, flickered within me. Was it possible I'd misinterpreted everything? That there was an explanation for the hotel bills, the jewelry, the withdrawals? "I want us to be happy," he continued, his thumb stroking my knuckles. "We deserve that after all these years." "I want that too," I said cautiously. "Good." He smiled, withdrawing his hand to reach for his wine glass. "Because I think we both know this isn't working anymore." The hope extinguished as quickly as it had ignited. "You've changed, Martha. Or maybe you haven't, and that's the problem. You're still the same practical, predictable woman I married, and I need more at this stage of my life." I stared at him, ice forming in my veins. More than 35 years of loyalty? More than raising your children and managing your household? More than supporting your career while building my own? "That's exactly what I mean," he sighed. "You always bring it back to obligation and duty. When was the last time we had fun together? When was the last time you surprised me? When was the last time you came home when you said you would?" I countered, my voice low but steady. "When was the last time you weren't lying about where you've been and who you've been with?" His expression hardened. "So that's what this is about. You've been checking up on me. Someone needed to keep track of our finances while you've been emptying our accounts." Richard's jaw tightened. He glanced around to ensure nobody was listening before leaning forward. "I knew you were monitoring the accounts. That's why I've been making withdrawals, to protect what's mine from your irrational behavior." "What's yours?" My voice rose slightly before I controlled it. "We built everything together. I built my career while you taught basic math to teenagers. Let's not pretend your contribution was equal." The casual cruelty stole my breath. I looked at this stranger across the table, this man who had held my hand through my father's funeral, who had celebrated every small victory in my teaching career, who had once known exactly how I took my coffee and what made me laugh. "Is she worth it?" I asked quietly. Your assistant, Jennifer? Something flickered in Richard's eyes, surprise perhaps, that I knew her name. Yes, he said finally. She understands me in ways you never could. She sees my potential instead of my flaws. How old is she, Richard? 28? 29? Does she know you're spending our retirement on hotels and champagne? She knows I'm leaving you, he said coldly. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The house will go on the market next month. I'm prepared to be generous with the settlement, provided you don't create difficulties. My hands trembled beneath the table. When were you planning to tell me about this generous arrangement? After you'd emptied all our accounts? Don't be dramatic, Martha. You'll be taken care of, within reason. I stood, placing my napkin beside my untouched entree. 35 years, and this is how it ends. In the same restaurant where you bring your girlfriend. Richard's eyes widened slightly. You followed me? I didn't need to. You leave evidence everywhere. Receipts, credit card statements. You're not nearly as clever as you think you are. As I walked out of Le Chateau, past couples enjoying romantic dinners and business associates sealing deals, a strange calm settled over me. The final thread connecting me to my marriage had been severed. It was time to protect myself, by any means necessary. He said what? Susan exclaimed, pacing my kitchen while I sat motionless at the table. After 35 years? That he's prepared to be generous with the settlement, provided I don't create difficulties, I repeated, my voice hollow, as if our life together was just a business arrangement he's now terminating. It was the morning after the disastrous dinner at Le Chateau. I'd driven straight to Susan's house afterward, unable to face returning to the home I now knew would soon be sold from under me. Susan stopped pacing and gripped the back of a chair. Martha, you need to see Diana today. Not next week. Today. I can't afford a lawyer right now, I said automatically. First consultation is free, and she's my sister. She'll work something out. Susan picked up her phone. I'm calling her now. While Susan arranged the meeting, I checked our bank accounts on my phone, a habit that had become almost compulsive. What I saw made my stomach drop. Susan, I whispered. He's emptied our checking account. There's less than $100 left. Susan looked over my shoulder at the screen. What about savings? My fingers trembled as I navigated to the savings account page. Gone. Everything except $214.37. Credit cards? I checked each one, finding the same message on all 3 joint cards. Account access temporarily suspended. Please contact customer service. He's cut me off, I said, the reality sinking in. Completely. Susan's face hardened. Get your coat. We're going to the bank. Now. 30 minutes later, I sat across from Janet, the branch manager who had handled our accounts for years. Her sympathetic expression told me everything before she spoke. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sullivan. Your husband came in yesterday afternoon and removed himself from the joint accounts. He explained that you were separating and had reached an agreement about finances. There was no agreement, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He's left me with nothing. Janet looked genuinely distressed. He also canceled the supplementary credit cards issued in your name. I wish there was something I could do, but legally, I understand. I straightened in my chair. I'd like to apply for my own credit card, please, and a small personal loan. Janet's eyes flickered to my bank statements on her desk. Without income or collateral, I'm not sure. I've been a customer here for 30 years, I interrupted. I have excellent credit, and I'll be returning to my teaching position at the end of my leave of absence. An hour later, I left the bank with a new credit card with a modest limit and loan application pending review. It wasn't much, but it was something. Diana's law office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian house downtown. Unlike the sleek corporate settings of Richard's world, her space felt warm and approachable. Bookshelves lining the walls, comfortable seating, children's drawings framed alongside her credentials. Martha, I'm so sorry you're going through this, Diana said after I'd recounted everything. Her resemblance to Susan was striking, the same direct gaze and no-nonsense demeanor. What Richard is doing is called financial abuse, she continued, and it's more common than people realize, especially with long-term marriages where one spouse has controlled the finances. But I controlled our finances, I pointed out. You managed them, Diana corrected. But from what you've told me, Richard always maintained the power. His name first on accounts, his approval needed for major decisions, his income treated as the primary contribution. She leaned forward. Martha, How quickly can you return to your teaching position? The leave is for the semester. I can't go back until January. Diana made a note. And your personal account, the one Richard doesn't know about. What's the balance? About $7,500 now. I've been transferring small amounts from our joint accounts whenever I found new evidence of his affair. Smart, Diana nodded. Not ideal legally, but defensible given the circumstances. Is your name on the house deed? Yes, we're joint tenants. We bought it 7 years into our marriage, when Michael was 3 and I was pregnant with Jessica. We've been there 28 years now. Good. That means he can't sell without your signature. Diana tapped her pen against her legal pad. Though I wouldn't put it past him to forge. Her office phone rang, interrupting us. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. Excuse me, I should take this. While Diana spoke in hushed tones, I gazed at a framed needlepoint on her wall. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Diana returned to her seat, her expression grave. That was Susan. She drove by your house on her way back from the grocery store. There's a moving truck in your driveway. Ice flooded my veins. That's impossible. We just had dinner last night. Apparently, he's not wasting any time. Diana was already gathering her purse and keys. Let's go see what's happening. 20 minutes later, we pulled up behind Susan's car, half a block from my house. The scene before us was surreal. A large moving truck in the driveway, men carrying furniture and boxes, and a for sale sign already planted in the front yard. And there was Richard, clipboard in hand, directing the movers, with Jennifer at his side. Stay in the car, Diana instructed, her voice steely. Let me handle this. I watched through the windshield as Diana approached them, her back straight, her stride purposeful. Richard's expression shifted from confusion to anger as she introduced herself. The conversation appeared heated, with Diana gesturing toward the house and the moving truck, while Richard repeatedly shook his head. Jennifer placed a hand on his arm, a proprietary gesture that sent a fresh wave of pain through me. After several minutes, Diana returned to the car, her face flushed with anger. He claims you signed documents authorizing the sale as part of a refinancing package months ago. Her voice was tight with controlled fury. He's already accepted an offer from a colleague. That's impossible, I whispered. I never signed anything like that. I believe you, Diana said grimly. Which means we're potentially dealing with forgery on top of everything else. I looked back at the house where I'd lived for 28 years, the home where we'd raised our children, hosted holidays, planted gardens, built a life. What happens now? I asked, my voice small. Now, Diana said. Starting the car, we fight back. The reflection in the bathroom mirror was barely recognizable. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. My skin looked papery, translucent. When had I become so old? 3 days had passed since I'd watched movers empty my home of 28 years. 3 days of sleeping on Susan's pull-out couch, wearing borrowed clothes, and trying to process the systematic dismantling of my life. I splashed cold water on my face and reached for Susan's guest towel. My wedding ring caught the light, a modest diamond in a gold setting that had felt so substantial when Richard placed it on my finger 35 years ago. With shaking hands, I twisted it off and placed it on the counter. The indentation it left behind was deep, the skin beneath pale and untouched by the sun. Martha, Susan's voice called through the door. Diana's here. In Susan's sunny kitchen, Diana spread documents across the table. Preliminary divorce papers, financial disclosure forms, a temporary restraining order against selling assets. I filed emergency motions to freeze any further disposal of marital property, she explained. But we're playing catch-up. Richard's lawyer has been working on this for months. How do you know that? I asked. The documentation is too thorough, the timing too perfect. This was carefully orchestrated. Diana pushed a form toward me. The good news is, I don't think a judge will look kindly on his actions, especially if we can prove the refinancing documents were forged. Where would we get the original documents to prove that? I've subpoenaed them from the mortgage company. Diana hesitated. There's something else you should know. I had my paralegal do some research on Jennifer Davis. My stomach tightened at the mention of her name. She's 26, started working for Richard 2 years ago as his executive assistant. Before that, she was a hospitality management major at Boston University. So young, I murmured, feeling suddenly ancient in my borrowed clothes and naked ring finger. There's more, Diana continued. She's worked for 3 other executives in the past 5 years, all men over 50, all married. The implication hung in the air. Diana didn't need to spell it out. Richard thinks he's special, I said quietly. That she chose him for love. Men like Richard always think they're the exception, Diana replied. Now, we need to discuss your immediate financial situation. The emergency support hearing isn't for 2 weeks. I have my personal account, I said, and the new credit card from the bank. It's not much, but it won't be enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment, Susan interjected. You can stay with me as long as you need, but I know you want your own space. There might be another option, Diana said thoughtfully. Do you remember that emergency medical savings account you mentioned? The one you opened years ago for unexpected health expenses? I blinked, trying to recall. The HSA account? We hardly ever used it because Richard's company insurance was so comprehensive. Is Richard a co-signer on that account? Yes, but we haven't touched it in years. He probably doesn't even remember it exists. Diana's expression brightened. Let's check the balance. If he hasn't emptied it yet, it might give you some breathing room. I pulled out my phone and logged into the long dormant account. The balance appeared on screen. $3,426.51. It's still there, I breathed, hardly believing our luck. Transfer it immediately, Diana instructed. To your personal account. My finger hovered over the transfer button. Is this legal? It's a joint account. You have every right to access it, especially given that he's left you without resources. Diana's voice was firm. Martha, this isn't the time for scruples. Richard certainly isn't showing any. I completed the transfer, watching as the confirmation appear. With this addition, my private funds now totaled just under $11,000, enough for a security deposit, first month's rent, and some basic furniture for a modest apartment. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Diana said, closing her portfolio. Your teaching position. How soon can you return? The leave is for the semester. I can't go back until January. Can you request an early return due to changed circumstances? I hesitated. Maybe, but I'd lose credibility. I told them I needed time for personal reasons. Understandable. Diana nodded. What about substitute teaching? Or tutoring? I could look into that, I agreed. There's always demand for math tutors. Have you spoken with your children about what's happening? Susan asked gently. The question sent a fresh wave of pain through me. Not yet. Michael's in Seattle with his family. Jessica's finishing her PhD in California. I don't want to burden them with this. Martha, Susan said, taking my hand, they need to know. Richard will contact them with his version of events if you don't reach out first. She was right, of course. But the thought of admitting to my children that their father had abandoned me, that our family home was being sold, that their childhood memories were being packed into boxes and carted away, it was almost unbearable. I'll call them tonight, I promised, though the words felt like stones in my throat. Later that evening, after making the difficult calls to my children, Michael's stunned silence followed by anger, Jessica's immediate offer to fly home, I sat alone in Susan's garden. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Booked a flight for this weekend. Don't argue. Love you. I smiled through my tears, grateful beyond words for my daughter's support. Having her here, even briefly, would give me strength for the battle ahead. The apartment was smaller than my former walk-in closet, a studio with scuffed hardwood floors and a kitchenette barely big enough for a mini refrigerator. But it was mine, paid for with my own money, in a secure building 10 miles from the house Richard had taken from me. It has potential, Susan insisted, helping me arrange the few belongings I'd managed to salvage. Clothes, books, my grandmother's china teacup that had somehow survived Richard's purge. It has 4 walls and a lock on the door, I replied pragmatically. That's enough for now. It had been 2 weeks since I'd watched movers empty my home. 2 weeks of sleeping on Susan's couch, wearing borrowed clothes, and trying to piece together a plan for my future. Diana's legal strategy was moving forward. The emergency hearing for temporary support was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, I had secured 3 regular tutoring students, not enough for real income, but a start. You should take photos, Susan suggested. Document everything about the apartment now, in case Richard's lawyer tries to claim you're living extravagantly on hidden funds. I pulled out my phone and dutifully photographed the sparse studio, the second-hand desk from Goodwill, the air mattress on the floor, the single plate and set of utensils Susan had brought from her own kitchen. As I snapped pictures, an incoming email notification appeared. I nearly ignored it until I saw the sender, Janet from the bank. Martha, good news, the message read. The loan committee approved your application based on your excellent credit history and your pending return to teaching. Please come in at your earliest convenience to complete the paperwork. I showed Susan the screen, hardly believing the words. $5,000, I whispered. It's not much, but it's enough to get a real bed, maybe even a couch. And it's in your name only, Susan pointed out. Richard can't touch it. That afternoon, after signing the loan documents, I returned to my apartment to find Jessica waiting outside my door, just as she'd promised in her text messages. My daughter's face was drawn with concern, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Mom," she whispered, folding me into a tight embrace. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" We sat on my air mattress, cups of tea balanced precariously on our knees as I explained everything. Jessica listened in stunned silence, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger. "Dad told us you had a nervous breakdown," she said finally, "that you emptied accounts and disappeared. He made it sound like you abandoned him." The realization that Richard was manipulating our children sent a fresh wave of pain through me. "I would never abandon my family, Jess. You know that." "Of course I know that." She squeezed my hand. "As soon as he called with that ridiculous story, I booked a flight. Michael wanted to come too, but Ellie's too pregnant to travel, and he couldn't leave her." "Michael believes me?" The question escaped before I could stop it, revealing my deepest fear, that my children would side with their father. "Mom!" Jessica's voice was fierce. "We both know who you are. Dad's story never made sense. And when he mentioned the generous settlement he was offering you, Michael asked why you needed a settlement at all if you were the one who left." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by guilt. "I didn't want to drag you into this mess. We're already in it. We're family." Jessica surveyed my sparse apartment. "Now what do you need?" Michael and I pooled some money. "It's not much, but it's something." "Oh, sweetheart, no. You're still a student. You need that money. What I need is to help my mother." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Michael so we can make a plan. He's furious, by the way. Says he's going to call Dad and give him hell." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. My children, the ones Richard and I had raised together, teaching them about integrity and loyalty, were standing firmly by my side. The next morning, Jessica and I visited a second-hand furniture store where we found a decent futon and a small table with 2 chairs. As we carried the furniture up to my apartment, my phone rang. It was Diana. "Martha, I need you to come to my office. The mortgage company responded to our subpoena." An hour later, Jessica and I sat across from Diana as she spread documents across her desk. "These are the refinancing papers Richard claims you signed." She pointed to the signature line. "Is this your signature?" I studied the flowing script. It was close, very close, but certain characteristics were unmistakably wrong. My M always looped back underneath, a habit formed in elementary school. This signature had a detached M with a flourish I never used. "No," I said firmly. "Someone forged my signature." Diana nodded, as if confirming her suspicion. "The notary who supposedly witnessed your signature has a record of complaints. I suspect Richard paid him to falsify the document." "What does this mean?" Jessica asked, her arm protectively around my shoulders. "It means your father committed fraud," Diana explained gently, "and it significantly strengthens our position in the divorce proceedings." As we left Diana's office, Jessica squeezed my hand. "Mom, I've been thinking. I can defend my dissertation remotely. I want to stay here with you for a while." "Jess, you can't put your life on hold for me." "I'm not putting anything on hold. I'm exactly where I need to be." That night, as Jessica slept on my new futon and I lay on my air mattress, I felt something unfamiliar stir within me. Not grief, not fear, hope. With Diana's guidance, I filed for divorce on grounds of cruel treatment and financial abandonment. The legal documents felt strange in my hands, so formal and impersonal for the dissolution of 35 years of marriage. "These papers will be served to Richard at his office tomorrow," Diana explained, as I signed the last form. "I've also filed for an emergency injunction to prevent him from selling or disposing of any more marital assets." "What about the house?" I asked. "It's already sold. I've included a motion to freeze the proceeds from the sale until we can prove the documents were forged. If we're successful, the court may void the sale entirely." The reality of what we were doing, formally ending my marriage, initiating legal proceedings against the man I had loved for most of my adult life, felt surreal. "We're also requesting temporary spousal support," Diana continued. Given the length of your marriage and Richard's financial actions, you have a strong case. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was helping Jessica organize our small apartment. Richard's name flashed on the screen. "You're suing me?" His voice trembled with rage. "After everything I've done for you?" "I'm protecting myself," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You left me with nothing, Richard. I was going to give you a settlement. On your terms, after you'd hidden assets and emptied our accounts." "This is a mistake, Martha." His tone shifted, becoming dangerously quiet. "I have resources you don't. The best lawyers in Boston. You can't win. We'll see." I hung up, hands shaking. 10 minutes later, there was a pounding on my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw Richard, face contorted with anger. "Martha!" he shouted. "Open the door!" Jessica appeared behind me. "Is that Dad?" I nodded, stepping back from the door. "Should I call the police?" she whispered. "Not yet," I said, though my heart raced. "Let's see if he leaves." The pounding continued for several minutes, then abruptly stopped. I peered through the peephole again to see Richard stalking back to his car. I immediately called Diana, who advised documenting the incident and considering a restraining order if Richard's behavior escalated. "Do you have a minute to talk?" The familiar voice on the phone sent a chill down my spine. I hadn't heard from Michael since our brief conversation 3 weeks ago, when he'd called to assure me of his support after Jessica filled him in on the situation. "Of course," I replied, muting the television where Jessica and I had been watching a movie. "Is everything okay? How's Ellie?" 8 months pregnant and ready to evict this kid, Michael chuckled. "But that's not why I'm calling. Dad showed up at my house yesterday." I sat up straighter, anxiety tightening my chest. "In Seattle? What did he want?" "To present his side of the story." Michael's voice hardened. "He brought financial records, emails, even medical information suggesting you've been unstable for years." "Medical information?" My head spun. "Michael, I don't—" "Mom, stop. I know it's all fabricated. That's why I'm calling." "What medical records was he showing you?" I asked, still stunned. "Therapy notes, supposedly from when you went to counseling after Grandma died. They suggested you had serious depression and paranoid tendencies. He also had a letter from some doctor I've never heard of claiming you were prescribed medication for anxiety but refused to take it." I was speechless. I had seen a grief counselor briefly after my mother's death 10 years ago, but there had never been any diagnosis beyond normal grief, and I'd certainly never been prescribed psychiatric medication. "The documents he showed me had your signature on them," Michael continued, "but Jessica already told me about the forgeries Diana discovered. I recognize Dad's handwriting when I see it, even disguised." Relief flooded through me. "What did you tell him?" "That I wasn't interested in his version of events, that actions speak louder than words, and that showing up unannounced at my home to badmouth my mother wasn't exactly strengthening his case." I could hear the controlled anger in my son's voice, so like his father's in tone, yet so different in character. "He's desperate," I said quietly. "The preliminary hearing is next week, and Diana thinks the evidence of forgery will significantly impact the judge's decision." "Good." Michael paused. "Mom, there's something else. I hired a private investigator." "You did what?" "After Jessica told me what was happening, I wanted to help. The investigator found something interesting. Dad opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands last year. He's been transferring funds there gradually, small amounts that wouldn't raise flags." My hand tightened around the phone. "How did your investigator find this?" "Let's just say he specializes in financial forensics for high-net-worth divorces. The point is, Dad's hiding assets offshore. I've already forwarded everything to Diana." When I hung up, Jessica was watching me with concern. "What did Michael say?" I explained about Richard's visit and the offshore account, along with the falsified medical records. "That manipulative bastard," Jessica muttered, her academic vocabulary momentarily abandoned. "He's trying to turn us against you and hide money at the same time." "Language," I said automatically, then laughed at the absurdity of scolding my 29-year-old daughter. Jessica smiled. "There's my mom." The next morning, Diana called with news. "The information from Michael's investigator is gold. I've filed an emergency motion for full financial disclosure, specifically citing the Cayman account. Will the judge consider evidence obtained by a private investigator?" "In this case, yes, especially given the pattern of deception we've already established with the forged documents." 3 days later, I sat beside Diana in a wood-paneled courtroom, Jessica's supportive presence directly behind me. Across the aisle, Richard sat with his attorney. an expensively dressed man who kept whispering in Richard's ear. Richard himself looked confident, almost bored, as if this proceeding was a minor inconvenience in his otherwise perfect life. But when his eyes met mine briefly, I saw something I'd never expected: fear. The package arrived via courier, a large manila envelope marked "Confidential" in bold red letters. I signed for it, recognizing Diana's law firm logo in the corner. Inside was a sticky note in Diana's handwriting. "Mortgage company responded to subpoena. Call me after you review." With trembling fingers, I spread the contents across my new kitchen table, a yard sale find Jessica had helped me refinish before returning to California to complete her dissertation. The documents detailed the home equity line of credit taken against our house, loan application, approval, disbursement records, and there, on the signature page, was my signature, except it wasn't mine. The forgery was good, close enough to pass a casual inspection, but certain characteristics were unmistakably wrong. My M always looped back underneath, a habit formed in elementary school. This signature had a detached M with a flourish I never used. The T in Martha crossed too high, the S in Sullivan too angular. I photographed the document with my phone, then positioned it beside an authentic signature on my teaching contract. The differences were subtle but undeniable. My phone rang. Diana checking in. "You've seen it?" she asked without preamble. "Yes, it's definitely forged. I had a handwriting expert do a preliminary review. He agrees." Diana's voice was tight with controlled excitement. "This isn't just divorce leverage anymore, Martha. This is fraud. Banking fraud." "What does that mean?" "It means Richard could face criminal charges. It also means we have significant leverage in settlement negotiations." I stared at the forged signature. This violation somehow felt more personal than the affair, more calculated than emptying our accounts. "There's more," Diana continued. "The disbursement records show where the money went. $300,000 to purchase a lake house, $150,000 for a condo down payment, both properties titled solely in Richard's name. What about the forged refinancing documents he used to sell the house? I've subpoenaed those too. If they show the same pattern of forgery, Richard is in serious trouble." After hanging up, I sat quietly, contemplating the implications. Richard hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He had committed crimes that could result in jail time. The thought brought me no pleasure, only a profound sadness at how far he had fallen. Later that afternoon, I received another call, this time from an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is Kenneth Reynolds from Sullivan Insurance Group, the company's chief financial officer." I'd met him at holiday parties over the years, but never had reason to speak with him directly. "I'm calling because some, discrepancies have come to our attention," he continued, his discomfort evident even over the phone. "Expense reports and client billing that don't align with our records. Richard's name is on everything, but as I understand it, you handled the family finances for many years." My breath caught. "Yes, that's correct. We've initiated an internal audit," Reynolds said carefully. "The board thought you might have insights that could help clarify certain transactions." Translation: they suspected Richard of embezzlement and hoped I might know something. "I'd be happy to meet with you," I said, my mind racing, though Richard and I are in the middle of divorce proceedings, so I'm not sure how much help I can provide. "We understand the sensitivity of the situation. This would be completely confidential." 2 days later, I sat in a conference room at Sullivan Insurance Group's headquarters, across from Reynolds and the company's legal counsel. Before me lay stacks of expense reports, travel reimbursements, and client billing records spanning the past 5 years. "We've identified approximately $342,000 in questionable transactions," Reynolds explained. "Reimbursements for conferences never attended, double billing for client meetings, phantom business expenses." I reviewed the documents carefully, noting patterns I recognized from our personal finances. The same restaurants where Richard had taken Jennifer, the same hotels, even the same jewelry stores. "This charge," I said, pointing to a $4,200 client gift from Tiffany's, "was actually a diamond necklace for his girlfriend. I found the receipt in his dresser." Reynolds and the lawyer exchanged glances. "Mrs. Sullivan," the lawyer said delicately, "would you be willing to provide a formal statement to that effect? And any other information you might have regarding misappropriation of company funds?" I hesitated, suddenly aware of the power I held. With a word, I could destroy what remained of Richard's career. The professional reputation he'd built over decades could crumble overnight. "I need to consult my attorney," I said finally. "This could impact my divorce proceedings." On the drive home, I called Diana and explained the situation. "This is a gift," she said immediately. "If Richard is facing not just divorce, but potential criminal charges and a civil suit from his employer, he'll be much more motivated to settle quickly and generously." "I don't want to destroy him," I said, surprising myself with the realization. "I just want what's fair." "Fair went out the window when he forged your signature and emptied your accounts," Diana reminded me. "But I understand your hesitation. Let me reach out to his attorney and feel things out." That evening, as I prepared a simple dinner in my small kitchen, my phone rang again. Richard's name flashed on the screen, the first direct contact since our confrontation at the courthouse. I answered cautiously. "Hello? You went to my company?" His voice trembled with rage. "After everything, you're trying to get me fired?" "They contacted me, Richard. They're conducting an audit." "Bullshit! You've been gathering evidence for months, planning this." "Planning what? To discover you've been stealing from your company? That you forged my signature on loan documents? That you purchased properties I knew nothing about? You're ruining my life," he shouted. The accusation was so absurd, so divorced from reality, that laughter bubbled up before I could stop it. "I'm ruining your life? You emptied our accounts. You sold our possessions. You forged my signature. You hid assets, all while carrying on an affair with a woman half your age." "She loves me," Richard said, his voice suddenly defensive. "She understands me. Does she understand you're committing fraud? That you might go to jail? That you've mortgaged your future, our future, for what? Restaurants and hotels and jewelry?" The line went silent for so long, I thought he'd hung up. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, "What do you want, Martha?" "I want what's fair. Half of everything we built together. Recognition of my 35 years as your wife. And an apology, not just to me, but to yourself, for throwing it all away." Another long silence. Then, "If I agree to a settlement, will you withhold your statement from the company?" "That depends on the settlement," I replied, surprising myself with my steadiness. "Talk to your lawyer. He can call Diana." As I ended the call, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. The fear and grief that had dominated my life for months had been replaced by something else entirely. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward resolution. And for now, that was enough. The courthouse steps gleamed in the morning sunlight as I climbed them beside Diana, my navy suit, purchased secondhand but carefully tailored, giving me a confidence I hadn't felt in months. "Remember, let me do most of the talking," Diana murmured as we approached the doors. "No matter what Richard or his attorney says, maintain your composure." 9 months had passed since I'd discovered Richard's affair. 9 months of legal maneuvers, financial discoveries, and painful adjustments to my new reality. But today marked a turning point, the final settlement conference before our divorce would be formalized. Richard and his attorney were already seated in the conference room when we arrived. He looked thinner, the confident swagger replaced by a subdued wariness. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away. His attorney, Thomas Blackwell, greeted Diana with professional courtesy. The preliminary pleasantries completed, we took our seats across the polished conference table. "As you know," Blackwell began, shuffling papers importantly, "my client is eager to resolve this matter amicably. We've prepared a revised settlement offer that we believe addresses your client's concerns while allowing both parties to move forward with their lives." Diana accepted the document and reviewed it carefully, her expression revealing nothing. She passed it to me, pointing to key provisions. The terms were significantly more favorable than Richard's previous offers. Equal division of retirement accounts, a substantial cash settlement representing half the value of the hidden properties, continued health insurance coverage through Richard's plan until I reached Medicare eligibility. "This is a starting point," Diana said evenly. "But there are still issues to address. The forgery of my client's signature on loan documents, the unauthorized sale of personal property, and of course, the matter of the company audit." Richard shifted uncomfortably at the mention of the audit. Following our phone conversation, I had provided a limited statement to Sullivan Insurance Group, confirming certain expenses as personal rather than business-related, but stopping short of a full accusation of fraud. The investigation remained ongoing, with Richard on administrative leave pending its conclusion. My client acknowledges certain improprieties in handling marital finances, Blackwell said carefully. This settlement reflects his desire to make amends. Improprieties? Diana's tone was incredulous. Forgery and fraud go well beyond improprieties, counselor. Blackwell cleared his throat. We're here to negotiate a divorce settlement, not litigate potential criminal matters. The two are inseparable given your client's actions, Diana countered. My client has been more than reasonable, despite suffering significant financial and emotional harm. As the attorneys continued their verbal sparring, I studied Richard across the table. The man I had loved for 35 years now looked somehow diminished, his shoulders hunched, his once commanding presence reduced to nervous glances and fidgeting hands. Had Jennifer stood by him through this ordeal, I wondered? Or had she, like so many before her, moved on to greener pastures once the money and status began to crumble? After an hour of negotiations, we reached a tentative agreement. The settlement was fair, perhaps even generous given the circumstances. Richard's sudden willingness to settle made sense when Diana later explained the gravity of his legal situation. The combination of forged financial documents, embezzlement accusations from his company, and the offshore accounts made fighting a losing proposition, Diana told me. He's looking at potential criminal charges if this went to trial. Add in the tax implications of hiding assets in the Caymans, and settling became his only reasonable option. As Diana and Blackwell stepped out to revise the documents, Richard and I found ourselves alone for the first time in months. The silence stretched uncomfortably between us. "How are the kids?" he finally asked, his voice oddly formal. "You could call them and find out," I replied, without the bitterness that would have colored my response months ago. "They're still your children, Richard." He nodded, eyes fixed on his hands. "Michael won't take my calls. Jessica answers but doesn't say much. They're hurt, confused. They need time." "And you?" he ventured. "Are you still teaching?" I went back in January. Full-time now. The principal created a new financial literacy elective for me to teach alongside my regular math classes. Richard nodded, eyes fixed on his hands. "That's good. You were always a great teacher." Another silence, this one heavier than the last. "And you?" I ventured. "Are you and Jennifer?" "She left." He gave a bitter laugh. 2 weeks after the company put me on leave, said she needed space to reevaluate. I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a profound sadness for what we had both lost. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "No, you're not." Richard finally looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "And you shouldn't be. I destroyed everything. Our marriage, my career, my reputation. All for, what? A younger woman who never really loved me? The illusion of a second chance at youth? I had imagined this moment for months. Richard's admission of wrongdoing, his recognition of the pain he'd caused. In my imagination, I'd responded with righteous anger or cold dismissal. Instead, I found myself simply tired. Tired of anger, tired of grief, tired of the weight of 35 years ending in betrayal and recrimination. "We both lost, Richard," I said softly. But I'm rebuilding my life, one day at a time." He reached across the table, hesitating before touching my hand. "I never meant for it to go this far. The affair was bad enough, but the financial decisions, I got caught in a spiral of panic and poor choices." "Why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. "Why risk everything? We had a good life." "I don't know," he admitted, withdrawing his hand. Midlife crisis sounds so cliché, but there was this moment when I realized I was getting older, that my best years might be behind me. Jennifer made me feel important again, special. And I didn't? "You knew me too well." Richard's smile was sad. "You saw through the facade to the scared, ordinary man underneath. Jennifer only saw what I wanted her to see." Before I could respond, Diana and Blackwell returned with the revised settlement documents. The moment of intimacy shattered as we resumed our roles, adversaries in a legal proceeding, dividing the remnants of a shared life. As I signed each page, I felt something unexpected. Not closure, exactly, but perhaps its first tentative beginnings. With each signature, I reclaimed a piece of my independence, my dignity, my future. When the final document was signed, Richard extended his hand formally. "I truly am sorry, Martha, for everything." I accepted his handshake, noting how strange it felt, this business-like gesture concluding 35 years of marriage. "I know," I said simply, because anything more would have been either too much or not enough. Outside the courthouse, Diana squeezed my shoulder. "You did it. It's over." But as I descended the steps into the bright afternoon, I knew it wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The secret to financial independence isn't just about how much money you have, I explained, surveying the 24 women seated in the community center's conference room. It's about understanding your relationship with money, the emotional patterns, the fears, the habits formed over decades. 24 months had passed since my divorce was finalized. 2 years of rebuilding, of reimagining, of discovering who Martha Sullivan could be on her own terms. My weekly workshop, Financial Empowerment, After 50, had started as a small gathering at the local library, just 5 women sharing coffee and financial tips. Now, it had grown to capacity attendance with a waiting list, sponsored by the community college's continuing education program. Many of us, I continued, especially women of our generation, were taught to trust our partners with financial matters, to sign documents without reading them, to avoid asking complicated questions about investments or retirement plans. Heads nodded throughout the room. These women knew. Some were divorced, like me. Others widowed. Some still married but determined to gain financial literacy before crisis forced it upon them. Today we're discussing hidden assets and financial abuse. Unfortunately, I have first-hand experience with both. I no longer felt shame telling my story. Each time I shared it, the narrative transformed. Less about victimhood, more about resilience and rebirth. After class, a woman in her 60s lingered, clutching her notebook. "My husband controls everything," she whispered, eyes darting as if he might appear in the doorway. "I don't even have my own bank account." I recognized the fear in her eyes, had seen it in my own reflection not so long ago. "Let's start there," I said gently, pulling out a chair for her. "With your own account, I can help you set it up." Later that evening, I returned to my apartment, not the tiny studio where I'd started my new life, but a comfortable one-bedroom with a small balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. Simple, but entirely mine. On my desk sat a half-completed application for a certification in financial counseling. After my workshops gained popularity, the community college had suggested I formalize my knowledge. The 6-month program would complement my teaching experience and give me credentials to expand my outreach. Beside it lay a proposal from a small regional publisher interested in my workshop curriculum. Not a book deal, not yet, but a step toward sharing what I'd learned through my ordeal with a wider audience. My phone chimed with a text from Susan. "Dinner tomorrow to celebrate your workshop anniversary? Diana's coming too." I smiled, typing back my acceptance. These 2 women had been my lifelines during the darkest days of my divorce. Now they were simply my dear friends, celebrating my triumphs as I celebrated theirs. Another message appeared, this one from Jessica. "Dissertation defended, Dr. Sullivan reporting for duty, flying home next weekend to celebrate." My heart swelled with pride. Jessica had completed her PhD while supporting me through the divorce, a testament to her strength and determination. Michael had sent photos earlier in the week of my granddaughter's first birthday party. The video call afterward had been chaotic and perfect, tiny Ellie babbling and showing me her new toys while Michael and his wife made faces in the background. My relationship with my adult children had emerged from Richard's betrayal not weakened, but strengthened. The crisis had revealed the true nature of our family bonds, not dependent on the facade of a perfect marriage, but built on genuine love and respect. As I prepared a simple dinner, my thoughts drifted to Richard. According to Michael, he had eventually been terminated from Sullivan Insurance Group, though criminal charges were dropped in exchange for full restitution of misappropriated funds. He'd sold the lake house and moved to Florida, starting over with a much lower profile job at a small insurance agency. Jennifer had indeed moved on, to a venture capitalist in his 50s, according to social media. The pattern continued, just with a different older man. Did I forgive Richard? The question no longer occupied my thoughts as it once had. Forgiveness implied an ongoing connection, an emotional investment I was no longer willing to make. Instead, I had reached something like indifference, a peaceful neutrality that allowed me to wish him neither harm nor particular happiness. My own happiness, I had discovered, had nothing to do with him at all. The next morning, I walked into Springfield High School, greeting students by name as I made my way to my classroom. Teaching had once been my career. Now it was my calling. especially the financial literacy course I'd developed, my opportunity to ensure the next generation would enter adulthood with skills I'd had to learn through painful experience. "Good morning," I announced to my first period class. "Today, we're discussing compound interest, how small contributions over time can grow into significant wealth." As I wrote equations on the whiteboard, I caught my reflection in the classroom window, back straight, head high, movements confident and purposeful. At 60, I looked better than I had in years, not younger, but more alive, more present. That evening, I joined Susan and Diana at our favorite restaurant, a far cry from Le Chateau, with its checkered tablecloths and robust Italian food served in generous portions. To Martha, Diana raised her glass of red wine. Teacher, mentor, and future certified financial counselor. I laughed, clinking my glass against theirs. "I'm not certified yet, still a lot to learn." "The best kind of teacher," Susan insisted. "You've helped so many women, Martha. You should be proud." Later, walking back to my apartment under a canopy of stars, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years, from devastated wife to independent woman, from financial victim to empowerment coach, from someone defined by a marriage to someone defined by her own choices. Had Richard done me a favor by betraying me? No. The pain had been too real, the losses too significant to reframe as blessings in disguise. But I had done myself a favor by refusing to remain a victim, by transferring those first critical funds to my personal account, by finding the courage to fight back, by rebuilding a life that, while different from what I had planned, held its own satisfactions and joys. In my apartment, I opened the balcony door to let in the spring breeze. On my desk lay the application for financial counseling certification, beside a framed photo of my children and granddaughter. No, Richard hadn't done me a favor, but I had saved myself, one decision, one day, one small act of courage at a time, and that had made all the difference. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and don't miss the next video, with more stories that will touch your heart.